It's Monday, May 11th, and today on the live stream, I'll be playing around with AI platform pipelines. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the live stream on Adventures in the Cloud, where we explore new and interesting concepts, tools, and ideas in the cloud. My name is Yufeng, and today we'll be looking at how AI platform pipelines works. This live stream is part of Machine Learning in Production, a series of videos providing a behind-the-scenes look at the process of building out data and machine learning infrastructure. And along the way, we'll encounter everything from data storage, web development, networking, security, scalability, and of course, machine learning. So let's dive into today's topic, pipelines. Google Cloud has kind of a bunch of tools, right, that it calls AI platform. And recently it released into beta this notion of pipelines. And pipelines, as I understand it, is meant to be this managed service that helps us kind of orchestrate ML workflows as a both reusable and reproducible pipeline. And the idea here is that we can take things like Kubeflow pipelines and TensorFlow Extended, or TFX, and have that all running on Kubernetes engine, but all abstracted away from us to some degree, right? We've spent some episodes now playing around with Kubernetes engine. We've tried Cloud Run, we've done stuff with PubSub and BigQuery, and some things are harder to set up than others, while others are significantly easier in some cases. And so you kind of have to pick where you want to be on that scale of specificity and how in the weeds you want to be, you know? And so with AI platform pipelines, we're going to play around with it and we'll see kind of where it falls. And hopefully by the end of this first hour, we'll have some sense of what the product is, how we get it going, and then we'll be back on Friday at the same time to dive deeper into it. We're probably going to run some more experiments on it, try some different types of models, and really try to get this thing going and kind of dig deeper into it. So thank you all for joining me today. And on Wednesday this week, my colleague Tahir in London is going to be joining us to talk about open data analytics, and we're going to be looking at working with Spark on Dataproc, which is something that I haven't historically looked at too much, but it is a very common and popular tool set. So I felt that it was important to cover this area. So I wanted to make sure we got that in as well. So with that out of the way, the general reminder of that there is a chat in the right-hand side or down below the video if you don't see it on the right. Feel free to say hi. Let me know where you are tuning in from, how you're doing, etc. Always love to hear from everyone. And let's move over to the coding view here. I've got the AI platform page ready, up and going. It's at the joining from Mumbai, says Srab. That is a long ways away. I can't even fathom what time zone you must be in right now. You're staying up for this. Hopefully it is not too late. And so this is the page that we're on right now, or I don't actually know what, did I paste it in too deeply here? But yeah, we're in the setup kind of stage, but there's a number of different pages here about it. It's a relatively new product and new release, so the documentation may be scarce. So that's part of what makes this interesting, right? So up here we have this introduction to AI platform pipelines, and we can see a little bit more about it. And Prashant asks how pipelines are different than Cloud Composer, and that's a really good question. There's so many tools out there now that are targeting this notion of connecting different pieces of a workflow together. Some are more targeting specific architectures or frameworks. One example would be Argo, right? Argo pipelines are targeting Kubernetes specifically, right? Argo.io, I want to say, is their website, unless I'm completely misremembering, which is also possible. Let's try Argo pipelines. Let's see, yeah, this one, Argo project.github.io. Okay, fair enough. And so let's see. Give me 1 second. I think I have a interesting sound here. Sorry, 1 minute. Okay. I need to make a slight adjustment. All right. Okay. So we're back, and let's see. We were talking about AI platform pipelines and how they're different from Cloud Composer. So Cloud Composer is probably more generic. It is the kind of main point that I would make there, and in particular, AI platform pipelines being built on Kubeflow pipelines is going to be much more specific to machine learning workflows. And there's going to be features, hopefully we'll see them built in, that are going to be more kind of suitable for ML situations. So it's kind of like a question of, do you want nothing built, scaffolding built, or a whole house built, right? And like with nothing built, it's just like, here's Kubernetes, right? Or even like, here's bare metal. And then with Cloud Composer, there's already some primitives built, but you still may have to repeatedly do a bunch of things or make your own templates. And then with something like AI platform pipelines or Kubeflow pipelines, I would hope that it would allow us to do something where it's already using best practices right out of the box. So, the beginning here talks a little bit about ML ops and what it involves, right? Machine learning ops, kind of borrowing from the DevOps kind of terminology. And that's kind of getting more popularized. And so, let's see. We're going to, save us the difficulty of setting up Kubeflow pipelines ourselves. Especially, this is particular, it's Kubeflow pipelines running with TFX, right? So, I forget which one's running on top of which one, but like they're both kind of involved here. And so it'll be interesting to see how they've fit them all together. So it saves us the difficulty of, wow, we don't even have to set up our GKE cluster, which is great, or installing anything. It claims that we can set up a Kubernetes or Kubeflow pipelines cluster in 15 minutes, so you can quickly get started. So why don't we just do that, right? Let's quickly get started. The voice sound is completely intelligible. Is everyone hearing me okay? The sound is coming through okay from what I can see here, but if it sounds weird, let me know. Matt Isaacson is saying it sounds a little bit weird, so we can, voice is okay. Okay, so plug in your headphones further into the headphone jack maybe. All right, so getting started with AI platform pipelines, we've got some setup steps. Sometimes I skip over these, much to my bad cable, Matt says. All right, all good, man. I guess you could put in a plug here for someone probably be like something wireless headphones, something. But all right, let's see. Correct. Make sure your project is set up. So I'm trying to see if there's anything special about the setup that they want us to have. So I've got AI platform pipelines open here, and it's worth pointing out that we've got this pipelines tag in AI platform. So that's where this all lives. And Saurabh also mentions deploying from Kubeflow versus setting up from GCP. There's a difference of notebooks and Khateeb. That's true. So there's Kubeflow being kind of an ecosystem of tools, and Kubeflow pipelines being like one of those tools. So let's see. We got to open a cloud session. Sure, we'll open a shell session. We'll see if we end up using this or using our local command line, but we need this role. So here we go. IAM always, if we're not careful, IAM can really get us. So we need to have the viewer and Kubernetes engine admin roles, or other roles that include the same permissions as the editor role on the project to deploy. So I believe we're good on that because we have project editor, or at least maybe even project owner here, running the following command to list the members of the viewer and Kubernetes engine admin roles. So I'm going to run that once this Cloud Shell finishes setting up. Replace project name with your own cloud project. So this is the usual text editing fun. I think, whoa, that's some terrible typing on my part there. All right, so I think we're in this project today. Great. So I'm going to paste that in and see what we get out. All right, we should expect to see ourselves listed. User Io la 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 la. Who is Io Lala? Interesting. That is definitely not what I expected to see, but I am a project owner here, I think, so it should be okay. We'll see what happens. Let's move on and let's start. Let's see. Select project. We want to use for the quick start. Click open. We're in the click new instance. So let's see. What do we got? New instance. Great. That pops up into a new tab. Okay. And Kubeflow Pipelines opens in Google Cloud Marketplace. Click configure. A form opens. So we got configure. And if create a new cluster link is displayed, then create a new cluster. Otherwise, continue to next step. Oh, interesting. It appears that we can kind of point it at existing clusters. So we can either select an existing cluster or create a cluster. So that's a nice little thing. So if I pick an existing one, no existing clusters available. So we'll create a cluster. And we can call it had a recommended name. I am going to go with their recommended name for now. And we want to make sure it's US Central 1A for the time being. I suspect this is going to be a limitation as the product is in beta. So folks who are connecting to the live stream from abroad, you'll have to unfortunately also be connecting to US Central 1A for better or worse. And we want to make sure we allow access to the APIs here. So we want to allow access to the following cloud APIs. Cloud platform, is that just everything? It's everything, full access. Nice. So we haven't implemented all the detailed kind of access yet. Thank you, Irene, for pointing that out. And namespace and app instance name. I think that's where it wanted me to set a different name. Yeah, after your cluster has been created, supply the following information. You would think you'd want to supply this beforehand. Am I able to create this without choosing this? Apparently. Huh. Okay, so there's this kind of dual step here where we're creating, and then once it's created, then we deploy to that cluster. That's cool. Let's see. Then we can deploy. Deployment takes several minutes. After the deployment is finished, continue to the next section. We're going to run an example pipeline. Use the following instructions to run a pipeline. Open it up. Okay, so it's kind of repeating itself, and we need to find the cluster. Oh, this is nice. So if this really comes up looking like this, it's going to be real nice because we're going to have kind of this UI where you can just open it up. So everything's connected. Oh my goodness. Because I've tried installing Kubeflow before. I've tried installing Kubeflow pipelines before. It works, but it would be so much nicer if everything just happened. And so this is a huge step change in functionality. So I'm really, really pumped for this. And it says we can click open pipelines dashboard, and it opens displaying a getting started page. Okay, so I'm going to stop here on reading the instructions. We got to cool our boots for a minute while this loads. I'm thinking in the meantime, let me peek over at the live chat. Is there any other comments, questions? Kubeflow pipelines are deployed more than ML workflow perspectives, whereas Composer is for general application workflow scheduling, authoring. Yeah, that's fair. Thank you, Saurabh, around kind of the differences between Cloud Composer and pipelines. So let's check back in here. It's what I assume is a kind of fake progress bar. We'll see where it goes. It's chugging along. Do a little dance. And then over here, there's a number of different links to various documentation pages. Yeah, that's a good point. So Saurabh wonders if there's any recommendation on cluster size. Here they've really stripped down the options. We just create a cluster, and you can see here it links out to, for more options, visit the Kubernetes engine cluster creation page. So it does kind of point us to a more kind of detailed config option, but that in general it's going to pick some defaults. So yeah, the size of the VMs, those options don't appear to be available here. All we can do is pick a zone, and then we just click create, right? So we can see this is just finished. It looks like it's a cluster size of 3, totaling 6 vCPUs and 12.75 gigs of memory. So I'm going to take a peek in there. Since we are familiar enough with GKE, may as well, right? Take a look at what it's making. It looks like we got 3 machines. And what kind of machines are they? Does it say? US Central 1A. Oh, wow, you can even pick additional zones. That's kind of cool. Why doesn't it say what kind of machines they are? Oh, I guess maybe the node pools are listed separately. I'm actually not sure. I mean, I'm sure they'll have to be showing up in the compute engine tab, so we can work around that. So yeah, it's these machines that we're running on, and it looks like machine type custom, 2 CPUs with 4 gigs of memory each. So there's 3 of them, so that makes 6 vCPUs and 12.75 gigs of memory total. So we've got 3 nodes. That's the size of the VMs right there for you, Sarab, that this happens to be choosing by default. It looks like it's all done. Let's go ahead and click deploy, and as I understand it, this step looks like it's going to drop all the software into that Kubernetes cluster. So that first cluster creation command allowed us to set up the virtual hardware, and then this second click takes care of deploying the software to that cluster. So taking a look here, if there's any other interesting notes they mention beyond just chilling. See, these are the types of things where I feel like in a guide, when there are things that take several minutes, it's fun to include either some optional reading material or maybe just like a cat GIF or something that you can allow people to hang out on while we wait. I'm wondering also now what this link is, right? If you're going to leave a loading bar here and a link, it's almost too tempting not to click. Preview application snapshot. Okay, so if I just click on that, I'm wondering what it will point to. So this took us to, where did it take us? It took us to Kubernetes Engine, applications, description, documentation. So I'm going to close this little side panel so we can see the full view. So this is the application deployment, I'm going to guess that's short for. Details, okay, application details, and we are running it like so with these. Does not have minimum availability, that's good. So a bunch of components here. This is one of the things that tripped me up a lot when I was first playing around with Kubeflow and Kubeflow pipelines, was just there were so many things going on. You deploy it and it's way more complicated than I really imagined, you know, like every single one of these is a separate deployment, right? Basically a separate deployment.yaml, and then there's a bunch of services on top of each one and a bunch of different, you know, you see there's a couple of secrets in here, there's config maps, there's a PVC, a persistent volume claim. Look at that, even. All right, so that goes back to a previous episode where we were playing around with persistent volumes and persistent volume claims on Kubernetes. So now I have a little familiarity with that. Back when I was originally looking at Kubeflow, I had literally no idea what was going on, and it was just, this was all so black box to me, and even now it's not like hugely understandable. So it looks like this is the YAML for the entire application. I assume it doesn't include everything, but maybe it does. I mean, it is really long. But even just right off the bat, my first thing that I notice is it lacks the PVC, the persistent volume claim note. So this must be just that high level application YAML, not, and oh, that's interesting. The version is 0.2.5. So fairly early days here. How are we doing on the application starting? So close, 29 out of 30. We're gonna get there on this waiting game while I kind of just wander around the Kubernetes UI. Let's preview what we got up ahead. Once this shows up, we'll be able to click this Open Pipelines dashboard, and hopefully that'll really get us going, right? So it said we can get started in 15 minutes. I think most of that time is going to go towards putting this page together. It looks like it's done. It says some components are pending, for better or worse. But here we are. We're in the applications level. It looks like when it finished, it just went straight to that view that we were previewing before. And I'm wondering now if those things that were said were not enough resources. Oh, okay, so it was just because it was in the process of deploying. So once everything is done, it truly is done. And in a hilarious turn of events, look at this. Look at these OKs. Some of them have capital Ks and some of them have lowercase Ks. That is amazing. that we have different capitalizations for this. I'm gonna grab this because it is humorous. All right, let's screen grab this for funds. Anyways, let's go back here now. This is still showing that there's no Kubeflow pipelines deployed, of course. We got to click that refresh button. So we click that. It's going to think, and there it is. Amazing. We've got our pipelines deployed. Let's click this open button. At some point, I'm definitely going to check that settings button out as well, but not right now. I don't want to get too sidetracked. This is one of my personal kind of things that end up costing me a lot of time, is I'll go wandering off on all these side quests to look into what all the menus have. Saurabh asks, how do we get Khateeb features in this setup? So I don't think Khateeb is built into Kubeflow pipelines. They're not one inside the other, but they're more siblings, so to speak. So Kubeflow has lots of components. One of them is Kubeflow pipelines, one of them is the Jupyter notebook, one of them is Khateeb, one of them is serving, and so they're siblings to each other. So I don't think that you would have to deploy Kubeflow entirely to your cluster, not just Kubeflow pipelines. So this looks like it's deploying a dedicated pipelines build. And let's see. So yeah, hopefully that addresses that. So this is the page that comes up. You'll see that the URL is not, how do we say, it's not a local URL, right? It's a global URL, not global. It's like a real web address is mostly what I mean. It's not some IP address or anything like that. So that's great to see that it's doing all the routing for us. It's handling all the authentication. We can see that if I copy this URL and open an incognito window, and let me drag this down for us, and I go ahead and paste that in and say enter, it should prompt me to sign in, right? So it took care of all of that. I remember when we were doing Kubeflow pipelines by hand, IAP, right, doing identity access proxies that was always a mess. All right, Kubeflow pipelines provide several pipeline examples. That's wonderful. Click tutorial, data passing in Python components. So over here we have a bunch of things. We want to click pipelines, and yeah, as Saurabh mentioned, Khateeb and some of the other things that are part of Kubeflow but not part of Kubeflow pipelines are not available in this release. So we're going to do data passing in Python components. A graph displaying the steps in the pipeline opens. Graph. I wish these were sized different. Like, can I resize these? I literally can't tell which one it is. I mean, I know we're looking for data passing, so I'm going to click that. So I click that, and we open this up. Irene says, feel free to launch the TFX notebook in TF 2.1. Awesome. So we'll definitely do that. Launch a TFX notebook as well. Tutorial, data passing, a graph. Yep, this graph shows up. I'm going to close this tab. And to run the pipeline once, click create run, create run. A run is a single execution of the pipeline. A form where you enter the run details opens, enter a quick start pipeline run as our run name. Sure, happy to do that. We're going to create this run. We're going to give it a name. Well, this is a long name, default. Paste that in and click start. So let's just take a glance at these other ones. So the pipeline we chose, the pipeline version is apparently the same name as the pipeline. Are there any other? Interesting. I would have thought this would have said like V1 or something. Description, this is live. This run will be associated with the following experiments, so we're going to not associate with any experiments. That should mean it'll go to a default experiment. So now it passes over. You see there's all experiments and all runs. So this run is doing its thing. It says it's unknown status. I assume it will improve as time passes. And pipeline dashboard displays a list. You can use experiments to organize it into logical groups. You can click the run named. The graph of your run is displayed while the run is in progress. The graph changes. Ooh, the graph changes. Let's click it. So this is doing its thing. We got some lines that are trying to be vertical but are failing. they're almost vertical. They're just a couple of pixels misaligned there, and this one's going the other way. I don't know if you can tell on the live stream. Oh, we got some more stuff coming in. Similar to here, these curves and lines could really use some alignment. All right, so we got split text lines. What happens if I click on one of these? We have artifacts, input, output, volumes, manifest, and logs. Artifacts, not a whole lot going on there. Ooh, a couple of things. What does this do? It's blank. Okay. Input, output. Even lines, odd lines. Minio, ML. What happens if I click this? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Well, those are even numbers, and these are odd numbers, I assume. Awesome. So what is going on here is the question. I wish it would. We have split text lines, and I want to see the inputs. Whoa, it rearranged itself again. Split text lines, output parameters, input artifacts, source. It doesn't really say anything there. Volumes, resource manifests, ooh, logs. Anything? No logs. Okay. Write numbers, artifacts, container logs. Yes. What do we got here? This is write numbers. Whoa, it wrote a bunch of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Lots of numbers. How far down does it go? Way too far. I'm going to close that. And we've got repeat lines. So it looks like there's like 3 parallel things going on. I'm assuming these are going to be repeated. Yeah. We should dig up the source of this at some point. It looks like this is the end of this quick start. I mean, technically, yes. We have now run an example pipeline in our pipelines instance, but like, can we do something with it? That'd be great. If we try the taxi pipeline, we can use artifacts and see lineage as well as data validation visualizations. Awesome. All right, let's try some other pipelines, right? We see, oh, okay, so this is the getting started. There's a number of pieces here, and then in pipelines, we just did data passing, and Irene mentioned the TFX one with TensorFlow 2.1. I suspect, and then she mentioned the taxi pipeline one. So it looks like it might be one and the same. So let's take a look at this. Got a bunch of stuff going on. Source code, GCP permission requirements. Yep, the taxi in my list. Awesome. CSV example gen. So let's create a run. Let that get going, and then we'll be able to see. Let's call this taxi. I don't know, taxi run. And let's we'll forget the experiment thing for now. It looks like there's a couple of parameters we can specify. What happens if I don't specify anything? KFP default bucket, workflow UID. It looks like these are parameterized well enough that it'll just run on its own. If it doesn't, it will fall over. So let's see what happens. All right, so it's going, it's getting started. It looks like our pipeline for the quick start finished, so that's good. Always good to see a successful quick start. Irene mentioned that if we run this, we can use artifacts and see lineage, as well as data validation visualizations. There's a tongue twister, validation visualizations. We have run output, and we have the config. Wonderful. So the data root is here, so maybe we'll open this real quick in a separate tab to browse to the data repo. Now I need to convert this gsutil URL into a URL that I can access via the command line or via the URL here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gsutil URL. I'm going to copy what I've got here. That's I know I'm in a bucket at the root level. I don't care about all of that. And it looks like it's just whatever's after GS comes after browser. And so now I can take this back in here, whoops, and paste it up here. We can see what we got. Meanwhile, let's go back over to our taxi run. Click on this, and this thing is still thinking its way through this first step. Now, Irene mentioned that we can use artifacts to see lineage, but it might not be this particular element, so I'm not going to hold her to that just yet. But yeah, it looks like this data is coming in at the beginning. So let's have a glance at what we got here. So this is our data CSV. It's 1.83 megs. Irene mentioned once statistics generation is done, we'll have it. It looks like there's a link here. Let's try to open the CSV in the browser. No dice. We'll just download it then. URI, link URL. Ooh, link URL. That's fancy. Nope. Is there some way for me to actually get it? All right, let's just copy it. And then we'll I still have the VS Code terminal open. So let's see, we're in some folder. It's fine, I'm gonna move the file anyway. gsutil cp, oh actually, you know what, we can do this. We are in adventures, yep. gsutil cp, this file to here, pull it down, and I have it open here in Finder for us. So there's our data.csv. If I try to open it in preview, will it work? It's giant, but it will load. Wow, okay, maybe I should have opened it in Sublime or something, but basically this looks like it's the famous taxi data set that we've seen a couple times in various cloud examples and demos over the years. It's got a handful of different columns here. I'll move it down so you can see all the column names. But the bottom line is it's pretty standard CSV. There's some numerical fields. There's some couple of text fields. And yeah, so that looks like that's the input data. And let's check back in over here. We got a bunch of steps have completed. And we have some run output. We have example validator here that talks about some of the pieces it's come up with. You know, one of the things that, you know, I find when I look at some of the stuff coming out of Kubeflow and Kubeflow pipelines is it's not always clear what is happening, I guess, for lack of a better term. And also, this is weirdly italicized. Not sure why that is. Oh, it's probably because this was TFX underscore taxi underscore simple, and then the UI is parsing it as italics, which is also kind of funny. I'm gonna highlight taxi and screenshot that. It's funny. Example gen will try to give us the schema of the data. Okay, let's see if I can find example gen. Because we have example gen. So there's 7 instances of that. CSV example gen perhaps? Yeah, that looks like the most likely one. So this has custom config input. So if I click on this, and we have the big view, which is cut off at the top a little bit here. And then this is the one with the italics funny action there. And and another funny thing is we can confirm, yeah, it is TFX underscore taxi simple slash data, whereas here it's that same path, but taxi is italicized. So I'm not entirely sure what it is I'm looking at. That's the tricky part. And StatsGen will show statistics for overall. It takes 10 seconds to load. Okay, thanks, Irene. So it will. She said that example gen will try to give us the schema of the data. And so what I'm trying to sort out is where the schema of that data, this example gen, is going to be showing in. I'm guessing it's perhaps one of the URIs, maybe. So is this a bucket that I have access to? And if so, why is the name so odd? So if I gsutil ls that, we've got, yeah, it exists, but okay, so then it says it's all that's in there is this one. So let's see what's inside of this folder. gsutil ls-l paste. So this is TFX taxi simple again, and it says that inside of that there's another folder. Okay, I'm sensing a pattern here. gsutil ls-l paste, and we have a bunch of stuff. Oh, Irene has another comment. The CSV example gen executor provides the conversion from an input CSV split to TF examples. Gotcha. So we're turning the input CSV file into TF examples, which is the format that TensorFlow needs to take in for its kind of inputs. And so now we can see here that now I've drilled deep enough, hopefully, that we have CSV example gen, evaluator, example evaluator, model validator, all of these different folders. And so maybe this will be our final jump. I'm gonna go into example gen, see what's inside of that. Maybe that'll be a bunch of TF examples. Okay, slash examples. What's inside of that? We have slash 10. Okay. And inside of that, I lost my spot. Do that again. Example. Okay. See what this is. Okay, so inside of that, it's 10. There's eval, and train. So that's this one. These are some of the most nested folders I have seen in a long, long time. And finally, we get to the TF record. So these are TF record files that are gzipped together. So that's at the folder that it generated, slash the name that it had, taxi simple, slash this long hash, CSV example gen, examples, 10, train, and then the gzipped TF record. Now, Irene says that the more interesting part to show is on the pipeline UI, the StatsGen visualizations. Fair enough. Let's go over there. So this is the StatsGen. Let's see if, yeah, maybe this is finished running. And we can try to find these StatsGen. Okay, so this is the example gen that was generating the TensorFlow examples. And we can see that it goes to 4 different places. One is the model evaluator, one's the evaluator, one is statistics gen. And then we have a schema generator, which goes to a transform, which passes into a trainer. And the evaluator takes as input the trainer and the original CSV data. So it's interesting, you know, it would be hard to wire all this stuff together manually. And, you know, this perhaps is part of the point that the, you know, Kubeflow pipelines helps orchestrate like workflows that actually need to be complex. And so this is the place that the artifacts in the StatsGen, and it takes 10 seconds to load, but the hope is that it is worth it. We can see the lineage of these kind of statistics. Oh, it finished. Yes. Wow. Is this running a little bit, a little facets tool slash the what if tool? That's pretty cool. We got static HTML and static HTML again. I'm not sure which one I should be looking at. Let's try the first one. Yes, okay, I was worried it would have to re-render. That would have made me sad. Do I wish this could be bigger? Absolutely, but I am very appreciative that it exists. So we can see here the stats generated for the data set automatically. So we can see that the values, which percent missing, means, and standard deviations. You can see their distribution. We can see the additionally categorical features, which were these 3. That was like the text features basically. That most of them were taxi affiliate, like we saw that I think. You can see a couple of different, oh wow, there's actually a lot of different kinds. And then payment type, there's a payment type for every taxi ride. You gotta get paid if you're gonna ride. And we have 7 unique different payment types, most of which are under cash or credit card. The other values are less than 500 by the looks of it. And we can click show raw data. Oh, that's cool. It shows it in table form. And so there's a couple of here. 26 had no charge. So I guess that's the equivalent of missing. And then pickup census tract. 0 values, 100% missing. It's just a dead column. So we could just, you know, very nicely get rid of that. So this is very cool. This is very cool that it makes this for us, right? And so I think a lot of things, you know, if you were with us on Friday, I got to speak with my colleague Andy. We talked a lot about automated machine learning and all the different things we can chain together to make, you know, to generate examples, explore model types, how things are pieced together, label data. You can imagine using something like TFX or Kubeflow pipelines to wire everything together. Saurabh says it doesn't come automatically. Unfortunately, the code needs to write data in a specific format for ROC and confusion matrix. Yeah, that's fair. For Lineage, click Artifacts and Lineage Explorer. So I am in Artifacts now. Visualization Creator. I'm not sure. Irene, can you elaborate? For Lineage, click Artifacts. So I'm in the Artifacts tab. I'll poke around some of these other ones in the meantime, but are you referring to a different, oh, and we can see the logs too, a different tab in the left pane? Oh, there's more artifacts over there. So that's funny, right? There's artifacts here, and then there's also artifacts at the top level. So we got artifacts, we've got parameterized TFX OSS. I'm assuming that's what we're looking for. And we've got, for Lineage, click Artifacts and Lineage Explorer. So we have a bunch of different Lineage things that we can look at. We said statistics was interesting, schema was interesting. I'm personally wondering what the model one has to show for it. Let's see what we got. So this is a file in GC. Oh, they're all just files in buckets. Interesting. Well, it saves us the work of kind of. Okay, so yeah, I'm saying it links us to the model itself, and I'm curious what these numbers represent. If I go up a level, it's just 15. Okay, so I thought maybe there were 15 ones that came before or something, but you know, it takes care of all of this stuff for us. Like, this is a legit pipeline now, you know. Here's our schema, and this is our statistics from training. This is stats. Very nice. So artifacts are, and this is one of the things about kind of this whole process, right? Is the product platform pipelines is a wrapper around Kubeflow pipelines, and as a result, it kind of predicates the need to be familiar with Kubeflow pipelines. Go back to the word model on the drop down and click on the model. Word model on the drop down and click on the model. Oh, whoa, we can click on model. Snap. And yeah, that gives us the link, and there lies the Lineage Explorer. Oh my goodness, that's a little bit buried. Very cool though. Let's see, we got input artifacts, we have targets, we have output artifacts. So let me see if I can reduce the sizing. Okay, so this is 100%. The text is still not fitting fully. I just want to see what it says. Parameterized TFX OSS is what those little text underneath says. Okay. If I click on one, oh, it made some stuff disappear. If I click on it again, oh, it made some more things appear. I'm going to click reset. See what is happening here. We have examples, schema, and transform graph feeding into tfx.components something. And yeah, so Irene says we can pick any component and it will show who or what leverages it, which is, yeah, which is really handy. Geez. If I click on trainer, oh, it jumped over here. A lot of things going on. So this is like a super real, you know, graph. And so some of them have little radio buttons, and some of them are darker and some of them are lighter. Model blessing. Yes, must have the, I'm not sure what a model blessing is. This is like the blessed model. It's been validated, I assume, right? It's coming out of validator. But if we pick something like schema, it disappears. Oh, it's here now. Okay, so the schema moves to the middle, and it's like before me was this and after me was that. Very cool. If I click anomalies, now anomalies is at the end, and it's saying it came from there to there, and it has this kind of lineage here. Model, schema, and does it just say, it just keeps going? Is this like a breadcrumb of everything I've looked at? The dark components and lighter. Okay, so the dark ones are components and the lighter ones are artifact outputs. Okay, so these are TFX components, right? It says components there. I wonder what it says. Components.statistics gen. Okay, so tiny. So that says TFX components statistics gen. Because I can't click on it. And I wonder if I right click, then you get into a whole inspect mess. We can see, yeah, it's TFX components example validator dot component dot example validator, because, you know, after you repeat it once, you should repeat it again. Let's see what else we got. If I click on like anomalies, this will show us the anomalies presumably, and it itself has a lineage, so that takes us it's circular, right? It comes back to Lineage Explorer. That's very neat. So if I click back, and we're in the Lineage Explorer, so we could have clicked on any artifact, really. Like in this dropdown, I could have clicked on schema and gone to what is effectively the same view, just kind of centered on a different starting point, right? This one starts on schema, which came from the schema gen. And so this is for as systems get really large, you can imagine this becoming extremely necessary, both for debugging as well as for kind of understanding what's happening and onboarding, right? As you bring folks onto your team to kind of give them the context of, this is our super massive machine learning system. So that's really cool. And so I think I want to take a peek at some of the other pages here, so and see what we might be well set up for on Friday. In particular, as much fun as it is to look at an existing pipeline, I'd love to get a better sense of how this all was created, whether it be this or something less complex, basically, to wire together. In especially, I'd love to see a kind of straightforward TFX wiring, right, where we've connected a couple of TFX components running it on Kubeflow pipelines, which are hosted on AI platform pipelines. And so let's see, this guide this is the setting up AI platform guidelines. It looks like it's talking about deployments. It's talking about installing on your cluster manually. Granular access versus full access. And then deploy to an existing cluster. So this looks like it's all about deployments and stuff. So we don't care too much about that. Let's look at creating an ML pipeline. So this talks about building pipelines using TFX SDK and building pipelines using the Kubeflow pipelines SDK. So it says you must first define your process. If you're orchestrating a process that trains a TensorFlow model, use TFX. If you're orchestrating a process that trains a model using other frameworks, use Kubeflow pipelines. So you get this flexibility in choosing which orchestration framework you want to use, and have it all run on the same environment. So I suppose that also means that you could have this cluster deployed in your team, and your team can kind of choose different options. So Saurabh asks what advantages we can get in using TFX SDK versus the Python SDK, the Kubeflow pipelines specifically. So let's see if we can answer that. It talks about kind of both options here. In the first one, it talks about TFX has components that only train TensorFlow models. So that's the big constraint, right? If you're doing TensorFlow models, TFX will work. If you're not, TFX will not. And in terms of like the reaction around why not just use Kubeflow pipelines for everything then, right? Then you have the ultimate kind of flexibility, quote unquote. My understanding is that TFX does have a lot of really good stuff built in around getting the most out of TensorFlow. So if you're a dedicated TensorFlow shop, then it probably makes sense to get up and running with TFX, especially now as it's gotten a lot easier to use. The components that it provides are very kind of well made for TensorFlow and custom built for kind of the way that Google does machine learning. So Kubeflow pipelines, there doesn't really talk about the comparison of the two. And so there's a lot of kind of introductory texts to read here. And then after that, it's all about running a machine learning pipeline, which it is kind of a contextual document. It's not super, so this kind of repeats some of the stuff we saw before, and it even goes into that taxi tip prediction. Oh, taxi tip, not trip, prediction model that Irene pointed us to. Before you run a pipeline, you got to specify the details. Great. And then it talks a little bit more about kind of the overview of the pipeline's interface. So it's not much in the way of like creating something. So it'll be interesting on Friday. We're gonna I really want to try to make something, so we'll probably dive into one of these kind of pages around building a cluster. So if you have a vote on whether you'd rather see things on Kubeflow versus TFX, let me know on Twitter. Maybe I'll drop like a poll on Twitter. If would people rather watch me try to work my way through TFX or work my way through Kubeflow pipelines. Let's see, what else we got? Pipelines. what other pipelines? We have XGBoost, so this must be built using the other ones. And also I had this open from somewhere earlier that it talked about where the source was. So I think when you clicked on one of these, down here, there's source code. For whatever reason, there's like a link here and then some text here. This probably should be 3 separate lines, but be that as it may, we have the source code for each of these demos are linked when you click on the graph. And then down here, there's a little source code link. Okay, so if you're following along or if you're seeing it in the future, that's also right here in the description now that I see it. Irene adds a note about kind of TFX, saying that it will allow you to use pre-built components to create, run, and restart pipelines, kind of rather than building your own. And you can see some if you follow the start page and launch the example notebook. Ooh, notebook. I love notebooks. Let's see, this demo. Oh, yes. Now we are talking. So what happens when I click on this? Because this was an interesting link. If you look at the URL here, I don't know if you can see it expand. Actually, let me just copy the link address and drop it into Sublime. I thought I saw it's notebooks deploy notebook download URL. So it's going to try to deploy a notebook straight up. To open this notebook, select the notebook instance or create a new one. I don't know why this menu is in the wrong order. Like I want to pick something from down here, but the option that maps to it is this one, not the one closest to it. Screenshot. All right, let's pick one. How about, so I made this image a long time ago. It's the only one with the TensorFlow image. So let's actually just make a new one. I've been meaning to do this for a while anyways. 2.1, and I'm gonna drop this on the East Coast, not Asia East, US East, thank you. How about East 1C? And let's go ahead and hit create for now. Ooh, right, pick 2.1, but where, hold on. Where was, yeah, okay, it defaulted to that, that's good. So this is interesting, right? This specific one doesn't let you actually pick the image. It's hard coding TensorFlow 2.1. Oh yes, it already exists, great. Let's just make another one. 2.1 dash, again. We can change these instance names, right? It'll be fine. So it's going to do its thing. This is an interesting kind of workflow that you can have these URLs. So it looks like if you have a HTML escaped URL, you can pass into this URL with a question mark q equals download URL, and then I assume this is the escaped equal sign perhaps, and then you can have this entire GitHub link. The links looks like it links to the raw GitHub content. That's pretty neat. So that's opening. Part of me wishes, ooh, okay, HTML unescape, escape, unescape. Is that really is that gonna work? One line, unescape tool, okay, cool. Oh, there's a JavaScript unescape function. All right, that's fine. Let's go from here to here. I wanna get it to straight to, because we can just look at it, right? Like we can just look at, oh, the unescaped string looks the same. What if I say escape? It's no better. Replace the following character. Okay, this is not doing what I thought it was doing. If anyone knows how to properly turn this URL, un-URL it, but like that's not the right words at all, for sure. And I'm gonna guess that this is gonna fail miserably. But hey, who knows? Who knows? Maybe it'll randomly work. No. Oh, it turned that into an equal sign. That's a starting point. All right. And then what if I unescape that? Unescape. Hey, look at that. It worked. That's pretty sick. Oh, it's the raw. I didn't actually want the raw. Okay, github.com/TensorFlow. Not found. What did I do wrong? Okay, so this thing, and I wanted to, let me paste that down here before I lose it. My precious escaped. All right, so it's TFX, docs, maybe without the master part. All right, TFX, and maybe the notebook's done already here. No, it's not. All right, so this is a race. Can I escape a link faster? The docs, tutorials, TFX, docs, tutorials, TFX. template, and that's going to load. This is still going. It says pop-up blocked, so maybe we say allow that for now. Maybe it's just stuck forever. All right, let's look at this here then. So this talks about using TFX pipelines with templates. We want to set up our environment. This would be a great time to have one of those open in Colab buttons. Oh, it's opening. So only barely beat it out. So this, we can, let's pick this up on Friday and run through this notebook in the actual Jupyter notebook once I fix whatever this error is here. But it looks like we're going to set up our environment, install a bunch of stuff, set some path variables, do some shell commands, connect to our cluster. We're going to copy a predefined template, and then there's a TFX command line. That's kind of fun. And then we can take a look at all of these files that it came with. So there's a bunch of Python scripts, including configurations, the pipeline definition, our features, our model, etc. I'm really interested in seeing how it connects to Keras, especially now that we're in TensorFlow 2. Estimator is no longer the kind of recommended way to go forward with things. So hopefully this one guides us through running this in Keras. And we got components for validation, training. This is going to be great. So really looking forward to this. And with any luck, I'll be able to convince one of my colleagues to join us on Friday, who's also a big fan of pipelines. So we're looking forward to that. And so, yeah, I guess in summary today, we deployed a Kubeflow pipeline in AI Platform. So here's our little pipelines quick start. It opens in a separate window. And thanks to Irene and Sarab and everyone else on the live stream for joining me and helping me out here as we kind of messed around with AI platform pipelines and kind of saw where things were a little bit, got our feet wet. There's a lot more here, right? This definitely is the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole world of materials here. Let me switch to just me as we wrap up. And so, yeah, definitely looking forward to Friday, as we kind of go ahead and try to actually run this pipeline manually rather than just looking at an example one and just kicking it off. So we're going to have to connect this to the cluster that we're running, right? These two are separated right now. And between those two sessions on Wednesday, we'll be doing a session with my colleague Tahir, who is kind of a Spark and data proc guy, and he is going to walk us through the world of open data analytics. We'll try to run some Spark jobs on GPU-powered clusters of Dataproc running on Kubernetes engine. So a lot of pieces connecting together. Really excited for that. And with that, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on Wednesday.